And I call this do-it-yourself defensive urbanism. Not hostile architecture, no, it's defensive and it's done by people who live here. And now comes my favorite. They also got cement at the Bouwmarkt and they put in these nice round tits.
On the social media and in the public domain in general, we often see how these two terms are being confused: hostile architecture and defensive architecture. While both of these urban strategies promote exclusion, actually they serve different kind of purpose to different group of peoples. Ow!
Oh my God! What a turning point! Are you telling me that stripping architecture is now going to adopt the concept of hostile architecture?
Or maybe not. Well, you're watching Stripping Architecture, and today, together with the public space detective, we'll strip the architecture of Rotterdam and try to see if there is a difference between hostile architecture and defensive architecture. These buildings are almost identical social housing blocks which are located along a popular street, the Binnenweg. The intention of these social housing blocks is to destigmatize social housing and instead of compressed living units packed in international style located at the edge of the city, here we have architecture that mimics traditional houses at the center of the urban fabric. In addition to this, the residential blocks have three major sides with different degree of privacy and intimacy. Front facade facing the dynamic and motored boulevard, side streets as calmer pedestrian streets, and inner intimate zones.
Well, obviously, you can see the style. It's social housing from the 80s, which is a very interesting period in architecture because the architects at that point in time were very much into social interaction, etc. And for instance, here I'm sure that the gates to the stairs were installed later.
Yes, she is right. If we check the historical data from the Google Street View, we can see that the doors were installed only 1 year ago.
And this specific context, this is designed like a little street, pedestrian street, no cars, but due to it being near the Binnenweg, a going out center, a night center, caused that the inhabitants here, had to take some action to get a good night's sleep, so to say.
This street resembles an extension of even more popular pedestrian street, the Oude Binnenweg. Therefore, it hosts different sort of bars, cafes and restaurants that are attractive for the nightlife. Therefore, very often the people from the bars tend to expand their nightlife activities between the residential houses.
The nightclub closes, people go out, but they will still want to smoke a cigarette, or we should have one more drink, or it will probably not be here. It will not be a party here every night, but it will be once a weekend. And if you live here, at a certain point you're fed up. And so the plants, for instance, were installed later to provide like a protection for noise and for people hanging out. And also the plantenbakken, the plants, the pots with the plants were installed by the inhabitants themselves. So people, sort of took the right in their own hands and went to the Bouwmarkt and bought these strips to make it impossible to sit on these plantenbakken. And I call this do-it-yourself defensive urbanism. Not hostile architecture, no, it's defensive and it's done by people who live here. So I view this in a different light, so to say. Defensive is something different than hostile. And they use different kinds of methods. Here they used also, first they put in plantenbakken, pots with plants to prevent or to bar off this sort of dead space. But apparently it was not enough, and they also put in these strips. And now comes my favorite. They also got cement at the bouwmarkt, and they put in these nice round tits, so to say. So in that sense, you can say defensive urbanism can even be erotic. Maybe there are surveillance cameras here, which is of course a different ballgame.
Yeah.
If you install a surveillance camera, you have to have a permit.
Yeah.
And this they could just do themselves. Go to the bouwmarkt, to the building market, buy some pots, buy some plants, and buy some defensive, do-it-yourself defensive urbanism strips.
Well, we are proving this, and should we...
I am, at least. Are you with me?
Absolutely. No, absolutely we are with this, because really we like it when people have the sense of belonging and
they show agency and ownership of this public space.
Hey, so before we go forward with the final point and the sketch reflection, we wanted to give you an interesting insight. Did you actually know that there is no book about hostile architecture, defensive architecture, or hostile urban design? Yeah, that's pity, right? Maybe we should write one about it. However, if you know any book about it, please let us know. But in addition to that, we want to suggest you another book, Humanize, by Thomas Heatherwick. It's a very good piece of literature with a lot of explanation of how we can make buildings again with more emotion and how we can make buildings relatable to us humans. In order to get this book, we will share an affiliated link in the description. You can go get it there, we'll earn some commission, and you will support our channel, and you will learn a lot about how to make spaces, places and buildings a bit more hospitable for us people, which makes sense. There you go get this book, Humanize, very good one.
And finally, let's wrap up this video with one of our reflection sketches and thoughts. On this illustration over here, we have imagined how a bunch of people from the same community are creating a certain kind of wall, a barrier, from everyday elements as a protection from the people who, at this case, are partying on the other side of the wall. And this is actually defensive architecture, when the community tries to defend their rights on their own. On the other hand, hostile architecture is more often invested and funded by the city authorities or some private corporations. So from this we can see that the hostile architecture is actually targeted against a vulnerable group of people who need understanding, compassion and sympathies. And unfortunately, this type of architecture is often funded by the city or the private corporations. On the other hand, defensive architecture is created by the people who need understanding, compassion and sympathies, and these are usually not supported formally by the city authorities. So finally, as you can see, there is no fine line between hostile architecture and defensive architecture. But if you make a good analysis between who is the creator of this type of architecture and who is the target of this architecture, then you may easily see what is hostile architecture and what is defensive architecture. Thank you very much for staying with us. Hopefully you learned something else. Big thank you to our patrons and people who support us. And of course, check these videos out over here. Share, like, subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye. Thank you very much. Ciao, ciao.